with lawyers looking at all of these contracts together. After that moment happens, then I will say, I'm sorry.
What if I told you that earning millions of dollars doesn't guarantee you'll keep it? Today, we're diving into the shocking stories of 15 incredibly talented black entertainers who went from living in mansions to filing for bankruptcy. 1. Wesley Snipes.
Can't tell you, they'll kill me.
Kill you, motherfucker, I'll kill you. I'll just enjoy it better.
Starting off our list with a Hollywood action star who took on vampires in the Blade trilogy but couldn't fight off the IRS, Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes was on top of the world in the 1990s and early 2000s. He was making millions per movie, starring in blockbusters like Passenger 57, Demolition Man, and of course, the Blade franchise. This man was a certified action hero with the bank account to match. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart faster than you could say tax evasion. Here's what happened. Between 1999 and 2001, Wesley failed to file his tax returns. We're not talking about forgetting to file 1 year. This was 3 consecutive years of not paying Uncle Sam. The government claimed he owed them over $7 million in back taxes. Now, you might think this was just an honest mistake, but the case got even more complicated when it came out that Wesley had gotten involved with some questionable anti-tax advisors who convinced him that he didn't actually have to pay taxes. In 2008, Wesley Snipes was convicted of 3 misdemeanor counts of failing to file tax returns. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in federal prison. Imagine going from red carpets and movie premieres to a prison cell, all because of tax problems. He served his time from 2010 to 2013, and during those years away, his career momentum completely stopped. The financial damage was devastating. Legal fees piled up, movie roles disappeared, and the money he once had evaporated. Wesley learned the hard way that the IRS doesn't care how famous you are or how many blockbuster movies you've starred in. When you owe them money, they will get it one way or another. The good news? Wesley has made somewhat of a comeback in recent years, appearing in movies like Dolomite, Is My Name, and Coming To, As America. But his story remains one of Hollywood's biggest cautionary tales about financial responsibility. 2. Isaac Hayes.
Oh, if I see a little broken hand.
You know that legendary theme from Shaft? That was Isaac Hayes, baby. This man was a musical genius who helped shape the sound of soul music in the 1970s. He won an Academy Award, a Grammy, and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Isaac Hayes wasn't just talented, he was a cultural icon who influenced generations of musicians. But despite all his success and accolades, Isaac Hayes filed for bankruptcy in 1976, owing over $6 million. So, how does someone so successful end up so broke? Well, it's a combination of factors that, unfortunately, many entertainers face. First, there were business deals gone wrong. Isaac had invested in various ventures that didn't pan out the way he hoped. In the music industry, especially back in the 1970s, artists often got the short end of the stick when it came to royalties and contract negotiations. Even though Isaac was creating hit after hit, he wasn't seeing all the money he deserved from his work. Second, Isaac was living large, really large. Expensive cars, beautiful homes, supporting family and friends, the lifestyle of a superstar costs serious money. When your expenses are sky high and your income streams aren't as reliable as you think, debt can pile up incredibly fast. Third, there were tax issues. Like many on this list, Isaac had problems with the IRS. Unpaid taxes accumulate interest and penalties faster than you can imagine, turning what might have been a manageable debt into millions of dollars owed. Isaac Hayes' bankruptcy showed that even Oscar winners aren't immune to financial disasters. Despite his troubles, Isaac continued making music and eventually voiced Chef on South Park for many years, which gave him a steady income stream later in life. His legacy as a musician remains untouchable, but his financial story reminds us that talent and awards don't automatically equal financial security. 3. MC Hammer You Can't Touch. This was everywhere in 1990. MC Hammer was the biggest thing in music, with his flashy parachute pants, incredible dance moves, and catchy hits that dominated radio and MTV. At his peak, Hammer was earning around $70 million. That's not a typo, $70 million. He was living proof that rap music could cross over to mainstream pop success. So how did he go from $70 million to filing for bankruptcy in 1996 with debts of $13 million? This is one of the most extreme financial falls in entertainment history, and the reasons are almost unbelievable. First, Hammer had a massive entourage. We're talking about 200 people on his payroll: dancers, bodyguards, staff members, and friends. Imagine writing 200 paychecks every month. This wasn't a smart business structure. This was financially unsustainable from the start. Second, the mansion. Hammer bought a 40,000 square foot house in California that cost $30 million to build and maintain. The property had 17 cars, a recording studio, 2 swimming pools, and even a baseball diamond. The monthly maintenance costs alone were astronomical. Third, the lifestyle. Hammer was spending money like it would never run out. Private jets, expensive jewelry, parties, you name it, he was buying it. He wasn't investing wisely or saving for the future. He was living entirely in the present moment, assuming the money would keep flowing forever. Fourth, the music industry changed. By the mid-1990s, Hammer's pop rap style was no longer dominating the charts. Gangsta rap and alternative hip-hop were taking over, and Hammer's income from music dropped dramatically. When the money stopped coming in but the expenses remained sky-high, bankruptcy became inevitable. MC Hammer's story is taught in business schools as an example of how not to manage sudden wealth. His name literally became a punchline for financial mismanagement. The good news is that Hammer has rebuilt his life, becoming involved in tech investments and social media. He's proof that you can bounce back from even the most devastating financial disasters. 4. Gary Coleman.
Did you notice anything unusual about Henry the maintenance man?
Yeah, it was wet. I guess the man sweats a lot.
What you talking about, Willis, became one of the most famous catchphrases in television history, and the adorable kid who said it was Gary Coleman. As Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes, Gary was one of the highest-paid child actors of his time, earning millions of dollars between 1978 and 1986. By all accounts, this kid should have been set for life. But Gary Coleman's story isn't a happy one. Despite earning substantial income throughout his childhood, Gary filed for bankruptcy in 1999, claiming he was broke and actually owed money. How does someone who earned millions as a child end up with nothing? The answer is exploitation, mismanagement, and legal battles. First, there's the issue of his parents and advisors. Gary later claimed that his parents and business managers had mismanaged and stolen his earnings. In 1989, he successfully sued his parents and advisor for $1.28 million, but that was just a fraction of what he'd actually earned during his years on Different Strokes. Second, medical expenses. Gary had a congenital kidney disease that required 2 kidney transplants and ongoing medical care throughout his life. American healthcare costs are no joke, and even with insurance, serious medical conditions can drain bank accounts quickly. Third, bad investments and poor financial decisions. Once Gary took control of his own finances, he made some unfortunate choices that further depleted what little money he had left. Fourth, the work dried up. Child stars often struggle to transition to adult roles, and Gary was no exception. He went from being a television icon to working as a shopping mall security guard. The income drop was devastating. Gary Coleman's story is particularly tragic because he was a victim from the start. He didn't squander his money on mansions and cars. It was taken from him by people he should have been able to trust. Gary passed away in 2010 at just 42 years old, still struggling financially. His story highlights the dark side of child stardom and the importance of protecting young performers from exploitation. 5. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye gave us What's Going On, Sexual Healing, Let's Get It On, and countless other classics. His voice was pure magic, and his influence on music cannot be overstated. But behind that incredible talent was a man struggling with demons, broken relationships, and serious financial problems. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Marvin Gaye was broke and living in Europe to escape his debts in America. He filed for bankruptcy in 1976, and the main culprit was his divorce from Anna Gordy Gaye. Here's what happened. Marvin's divorce settlement required him to pay Anna substantial alimony. The judge ordered him to pay her an advance of $600,000 from the royalties of his next album. That album ended up being Here, My Dear, which Marvin literally created to pay off his ex-wife. Imagine being so broke from divorce that you have to make an entire album just to pay your settlement. But the financial problems went deeper. Marvin was also dealing with heavy drug addiction, particularly cocaine, which was draining his money fast. Drugs are expensive, and addiction doesn't care about your bank account balance. On top of that, Marvin owed the IRS a fortune in back taxes. Like many artists on this list, he hadn't been paying his taxes properly, and the penalties and interest had accumulated to the point where he couldn't catch up. Finally, there was his lifestyle and poor financial management. Marvin wasn't paying attention to his business affairs. He was focused on his art and his personal struggles, not on budgets and investments. Marvin eventually made a comeback with Sexual Healing in 1982, which gave him a financial boost. Tragically, he was shot and killed by his own father in 1984, cutting short what could have been a full financial recovery. Marvin Gaye's story shows how personal problems, divorce, addiction, and mental health struggles can completely destroy your finances no matter how talented you are. 6. Sinbad.
The 70s because you played, but you played different. Like my father, we all had bikes in the 70s. My dad said, let him ride as long as he needs to ride.
If you grew up in the 90s, you know Sinbad. He was the clean comedian who appeared in movies like Jingle All the Way and House Guest, had his own sitcom called The Sinbad Show, and was a constant presence on HBO comedy specials. Sinbad was successful, funny, and seemed to be doing great. Behind the scenes, though, financial disaster was brewing. Sinbad filed for bankruptcy in 2009 and then again in 2013. The total debts? We're talking about owing millions, over $11 million in the 2013 filing alone. For a working comedian with steady gigs, how does this happen? First and foremost, taxes. Sinbad's biggest problem was the IRS. He owed the California Franchise Tax Board and the IRS approximately $8.3 million in back taxes. That's the bulk of his debt right there. When you don't pay your taxes for multiple years, the government adds penalties and interest that can double or triple what you originally owed. Second, Sinbad was living beyond his means. He had expenses that exceeded his income. When you're a celebrity, there's pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle: nice house, nice cars, supporting family members. But if your expenses are higher than what you're bringing in, you're just digging yourself deeper into debt every single month. Third, the entertainment industry can be unpredictable. Sinbad was getting steady work, but he wasn't commanding the mega salaries of top-tier movie stars. His sitcom was canceled after just one season. When you're expecting a certain level of income and it doesn't materialize, but your bills remain the same, you've got a serious problem. What makes Sinbad's situation even more sympathetic is that he's been open about his struggles and has tried to be responsible. He didn't run from his debts. He faced them head-on and worked with the bankruptcy system to restructure his obligations. Sinbad's financial troubles show that even when you're working consistently and doing everything you can, tax debt can swallow you whole. The IRS is relentless, and once you fall behind, catching up feels nearly impossible. The good news is that Sinbad kept working and fighting through his financial problems with dignity and humor. 7. Kanye West.
All these words, we used to say these, so it's all these like words that are being removed from our vocabulary, words that evoke emotion.
Kanye West is a musical genius. Love him or hate him, you can't deny his impact on hip-hop and popular culture. He's won 24 Grammy Awards and produced some of the most critically acclaimed albums in modern music history. But in 2016, Kanye made a shocking announcement on Twitter. He was $53 million in debt. Wait, what? How is someone married to a billionaire family and selling millions of albums broke? Well, Kanye's situation is a bit different from others on this list because it was specifically related to his fashion ambitions. Kanye had been pouring his own money into his fashion label, Yeezy, trying to break into the fashion industry. He invested tens of millions of dollars into fashion shows, production, and design, but the returns weren't coming in fast enough. In the fashion world, you often have to spend money for years before seeing any profit, and Kanye was in that difficult middle phase. He publicly pleaded with Mark Zuckerberg on Twitter to invest $1 billion in his ideas. While this seemed erratic at the time, it showed just how desperate the situation had become. Kanye had a vision for his brand, but he didn't have the capital to make it happen without going into serious debt. Here's the thing about Kanye's debt. It wasn't from drugs, gambling, or reckless personal spending. It was business debt from trying to build an empire. That's a different type of financial problem, but it's still a massive burden that can crush you. The incredible part of Kanye's story is the comeback. His partnership with Adidas for Yeezy sneakers became one of the most successful shoe lines in history. By 2020, Kanye was officially a billionaire, with Forbes estimating his net worth at $1.3 billion. He went from being $53 million in debt to being a billionaire in just 4 years. Of course, Kanye later lost his Adidas deal in 2022 after controversial statements, which reportedly cut his net worth significantly. But his 2016 debt situation shows that even the biggest stars can face financial crisis. Kanye's story is unique on this list because he turned business debt into eventual massive success, proving that the type of debt matters as much as the amount. 8. Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill was part of the Fugees, one of the biggest hip-hop groups of the 1990s. Then she released her solo album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which won 5 Grammy Awards and became one of the best-selling albums of all time. Lauryn had everything: talent, critical acclaim, commercial success, and respect from the entire music industry. But in 2012, Lauryn Hill was charged with tax evasion for failing to pay federal taxes on approximately $1.8 million of income earned between 2005 and 2007. In 2013, she was sentenced to 3 months in federal prison, followed by 3 months of home confinement. So what happened? Why would someone so successful not pay their taxes? First, Lauryn had stepped away from the music industry for years, living a more private life and not releasing new music. When you stop working in entertainment, the income stops too, but the tax bills from previous years don't disappear. Second, there were reports of financial mismanagement and poor advice. Like many artists, Lauryn may not have had the right people managing her money, or she may have trusted the wrong advisors who didn't properly handle her tax obligations. Third, Lauryn herself stated that she had philosophical and ethical issues with the music industry and the system in general. She felt exploited by record labels and withdrew from the industry. While these feelings are valid, unfortunately, the IRS doesn't care about your philosophical objections. They still want their money. In the end, Lauren had to pay back approximately $970,000 in back taxes and penalties, and she served her prison time. Since then, she's occasionally performed and released some music, but she's never returned to the level of productivity she had in the late 1990s. Lauryn Hill's story is particularly sad because her talent is undeniable. She could have been one of the biggest stars in music history, but personal choices and tax problems derailed what should have been a legendary career. Her case reminds us that you can't just stop paying taxes because you're frustrated with the industry or the system. The government will always get what they're owed, one way or another. 9. T-Pain. T-Pain dominated the mid-2000s with hits like Buy You a Drink, Bartender, and I'm Sprung. He wasn't just performing his own music, he was featured on hit songs by virtually every major artist of that era. T-Pain's sound was everywhere and the money was rolling in. We're talking about approximately $40 million earned during his peak years. But by 2013, T-Pain was broke. So broke, in fact, that he couldn't even buy a Burger King meal. How do you go from $40 million to not being able to afford fast food? This is a masterclass in financial mismanagement. First, T-Pain was spending absurd amounts of money on things that lost value immediately. He bought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, luxury cars, and designer clothes. These aren't investments. They're expenses that drain your bank account and give you nothing in return except temporary satisfaction. Second, and this is the big one, T-Pain bought over $40 million worth of property and expensive items on credit. He was leveraging his future earnings to buy things now, assuming the money would always keep coming in. When his music style fell out of favor and his income decreased, he was stuck with massive debt and no way to pay it off. Third, T-Pain was supporting a large entourage and helping out friends and family financially. Being generous is admirable, but when you're giving away money you don't actually have, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Fourth, T-Pain admitted he didn't understand his finances. He trusted the wrong people, didn't pay attention to where his money was going, and just assumed everything would be fine. This is a common thread among entertainers. They focus on their craft and delegate the money stuff to others, sometimes with devastating results. The emotional toll was severe. T-Pain has spoken openly about falling into depression when he realized how broke he was. Imagine going from being on top of the world to genuinely struggling to survive. The good news is that T-Pain has made a comeback. He won The Masked Singer in 2019, which reignited public interest in his career. He's been smart about rebuilding, focusing on live performances, and being more careful with his finances. T-Pain's story is a textbook example of how quickly you can lose everything when you don't pay attention to your money. 10. Evander Holyfield. Now, Evander Holyfield is primarily known as a boxer, but he's also appeared in several films and television shows, making him relevant to our list. More importantly, his financial fall is one of the most shocking in sports history. Evander Holyfield earned an estimated $230 million during his boxing career. That's $250 million. He was a four-time world heavyweight champion who had legendary fights against Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, and other boxing greats. By all accounts, Holyfield should have been set for multiple lifetimes. But in 2008, Holyfield's 54,000 square foot mansion in Georgia went into foreclosure. He was forced to auction off his possessions to pay debts. How do you lose $230 million? Let's break it down. First, the mansion itself was bleeding money. This wasn't just a big house, it was a 109-room estate with 17 bathrooms, an indoor bowling alley, and a movie theater. The property taxes alone were over $1 million per year. The maintenance costs were astronomical. Holyfield was spending money just to keep his house running. Second, Holyfield has 11 children with 6 different women. The child support payments were enormous, reportedly around $3 million per year at one point. Supporting multiple families across different households is incredibly expensive, even when you're rich. Third, like many athletes, Holyfield kept boxing long after he should have retired. He was trying to make comebacks and earn money, but the paydays weren't what they used to be, and he was risking his health for diminishing returns. Fourth, bad investments and poor financial advice. Holyfield trusted people who made poor decisions with his money, investing in ventures that failed and leaving him with nothing to show for his earnings. Fifth, and this is crucial, Holyfield was living like he was still making tens of millions per year long after his boxing income had dried up. When your income drops but your expenses stay the same, bankruptcy becomes inevitable. Evander Holyfield's story is particularly tragic because he was such a respected champion. He had the earnings to live comfortably forever, but a combination of excessive spending, bad advice, and high expenses consumed everything. His case is often cited in financial literacy classes for athletes, showing what can happen when you don't plan for life after your playing days are over. 11. Toni Braxton. Toni Braxton's voice is legendary. She gave us Unbreak My Heart, Breathe Again, and numerous other hits. She's sold over 70 million records worldwide, won 7 Grammy Awards, and was one of the biggest stars of the 1990s and 2000s. With that level of success, you'd think financial security would be guaranteed. But Toni Braxton filed for bankruptcy in 1996 and then again in 2010. Her total debts in the 2010 filing were estimated at between $10 and $50 million. How does someone who sold 70 million records end up broke twice? The first bankruptcy in 1996 came from a bad record contract. Toni was signed to Loveface Records, and despite selling millions of albums, she was only receiving a tiny percentage of the profits. She was reportedly making only 35 cents per album sold. Meanwhile, she was spending money like she was getting the full retail price. She owed millions to various creditors, and bankruptcy was the only way out. The second bankruptcy in 2010 had different causes. By this time, Toni had serious health issues. She was diagnosed with lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease that required expensive ongoing treatment. Medical bills were piling up fast. In America, even with insurance, a chronic illness can bankrupt you quickly. Additionally, Toni had purchased a home for $2.5 million that she ultimately couldn't afford. Real estate can be a great investment, but it can also be a money pit if you're not careful. Between the mortgage, property taxes, and maintenance, the house was draining her finances. There were also issues with her Las Vegas show residency being canceled, which meant that expected income suddenly disappeared. When you're counting on a certain amount of money and it doesn't come through, but your obligations remain, you're in trouble. Throughout all of this, Toni was still living a celebrity lifestyle with expensive clothes, travel, and other luxuries. When your income decreases but your spending doesn't, the math simply doesn't work. Toni has been remarkably open about her financial struggles, which has helped reduce the stigma around bankruptcy. She's continued to work consistently, appearing on reality TV and touring regularly. Her story highlights 2 important issues: the exploitation of artists in bad record deals and how health problems in America can destroy even a successful person's finances. 12. Lil' Kim.
I done been through it all, shootouts and fistfights.
Lil' Kim was a pioneer for women in hip-hop. She broke barriers with her bold style and explicit lyrics, becoming one of the best-selling female rap artists of all time. Her album Hardcore was certified double platinum, and she was a member of Junior MAFIA. Alongside the notorious B.I.G., Lil' Kim was a superstar in every sense of the word. But in 2018, Lil' Kim filed for bankruptcy, revealing that she owed more than $1 million in unpaid taxes and other debts. Her assets were worth only about $82,000, while her debts exceeded $4 million. This is a massive financial hole for anyone, let alone someone who was once selling millions of records. So what went wrong? First and foremost, like so many on this list, Lil' Kim had major tax problems. She owed the IRS approximately $1,852 in back taxes. The IRS doesn't play around. Once you owe them money, they will pursue you relentlessly, adding penalties and interest until the debt becomes impossible to handle. Second, Lil Kim was involved in various legal battles over the years, including a perjury conviction in 2005 that resulted in prison time. Legal troubles are expensive, lawyers cost serious money, and when you're fighting multiple cases over many years, the costs add up to hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Third, there's the issue of income declining while expenses remained high. Lil Kim's music career wasn't generating the same revenue it once did, but she was still maintaining a celebrity lifestyle. The math just didn't work anymore. Fourth, like many artists, Lil Kim may have been taken advantage of by poor management or bad advisors. The music industry has a long history of exploiting artists, particularly in the early days of their careers when they sign unfavorable contracts. Filing for bankruptcy allowed Lil Kim to restructure her debts and get a fresh start. It's not the ending anyone wants for such an influential artist, but it gave her a legal pathway to deal with debts that had become unmanageable. Lil Kim's case reminds us that past success doesn't protect you from current financial problems. The music industry can be especially brutal. You can sell millions of records, but still end up broke if you're not careful with contracts, taxes, and spending. Despite her financial troubles, Lil Kim's legacy as a hip-hop pioneer remains intact. 13. 50 Cent Curtis Jackson, known as 50 Cent, seemed untouchable. His album Get Rich or Die Tryin' was one of the best-selling albums of the 2000s. He had successful business ventures, including Vitamin Water, which reportedly earned him $100 million when Coca-Cola bought the company, clothing lines, video games, and more. Forbes estimated his net worth at around $155 million at his peak. This guy was the definition of a successful entrepreneur. Then, in 2015, 50 Cent filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, claiming debts of over $32 million. Wait, how does someone worth $155 million end up $32 million in debt? The answer is both complicated and simpler than you might think. First, lawsuits. 50 Cent was hit with multiple expensive lawsuits. One was from Sleek Audio, a headphone company, resulting in a $17.2 million judgment. Another was from Lastonia Leviston, who sued him for posting a sex tape online. That judgment was $7 million. These two lawsuits alone account for over $24 million of his debt. Second, and this is important, 50 Cent's bankruptcy filing was strategic, not necessarily because he was truly broke. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is often used by wealthy people as a business tactic to restructure debts and protect assets while negotiating with creditors. It's different from Chapter 7 bankruptcy, where you're completely broke and liquidating everything. Third, despite his business success, 50 Cent was living an extremely expensive lifestyle. Multiple mansions, including a 52-room Connecticut estate formerly owned by Mike Tyson, luxury cars, jewelry, and constantly maintaining his public image of wealth. All of this costs serious money to maintain. Fourth, some of his business ventures weren't as successful as Vitamin Water. Not every investment pans out, and when you're investing millions into various projects, the losses can be substantial. Here's the fascinating part. 50 Cent came out of bankruptcy in 2017 after paying back his creditors and restructuring his finances. Since then, he's made even more money through television production, particularly his Power Series franchise on Starz, which has been hugely successful. Many financial experts believe 50 Cent's bankruptcy was a smart business move to handle the lawsuit judgments while protecting his other assets. Whether he was truly broke or just strategically maneuvering is still debated. What's clear is that even when you think you've made it, legal troubles can create debts so large that even $155 million isn't enough to cover them without restructuring. 14. Nina Leakes. Nene Leakes became a household name as an original cast member of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Her larger-than-life personality made her one of the most popular reality TV stars of the past 15 years. She appeared on The New Normal, Dancing with the Stars, Celebrity Apprentice, and numerous other shows. Nene was everywhere, and she was making good money from her various appearances and endorsements. However, Nene has faced significant financial hardships, including issues with unpaid taxes, back rent, and other debts. While she hasn't filed for bankruptcy publicly like others on this list, her financial struggles have been well documented through court records and legal filings. Reports indicated that Nene owed substantial amounts in back rent for business properties and had tax liens placed against her. Tax liens are serious. They mean the government has a legal claim on your property because you haven't paid your taxes. This isn't a simple bill you can ignore. It can result in the government seizing your assets. So how does a reality TV star with multiple income streams end up in financial trouble? First, reality TV money isn't as consistent as people think. Yes, the stars of major shows like Real Housewives make good money, but it's not endless. When Nene left RCHOI, then came back, then left again, her primary income source became unstable. Second, maintaining the lifestyle of a reality TV star is expensive. You're expected to always look glamorous, wear expensive clothes and jewelry, live in a beautiful home, and project success. All of that costs money, and when your income fluctuates but your expenses don't, problems develop quickly. Third, business ventures can fail. Nene has tried various business projects over the years, and not all of them have been successful. Failed businesses still have costs, leases, inventory, employees, and those bills don't disappear just because the business didn't work out. Fourth, legal issues can be costly. Nene has been involved in various lawsuits and legal disputes over the years, and lawyers are expensive. Even if you win a case, the legal fees can be devastating to your finances. Nene has also faced personal tragedy, losing her husband Greg Leakes to cancer in 2021. Medical bills for cancer treatment are notoriously expensive, and end-of-life care can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, even with insurance. Nene's situation shows that reality TV fame doesn't equal financial security. The income can be substantial, but it's often inconsistent, and the pressure to maintain a certain image can lead to overspending that catches up with you eventually. So, which story shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content like this.